is going on, all you wonderful A-plusers out there? It is I, Stuart, here once again with another review for you guys, this time with Superman and Lois, Season 3 episode. I believe this was episode number 10 we just got. Before I really get into the details, I'm just going to say right off the bat, this was a very in-the-middle episode. Probably the worst of the season, but that being said, there haven't been any really bad episodes this season so far, so I would say that, this being okay would basically make it the worst episode of the season, is the fact that this episode in general was just okay. I'd say there were parts of the episode that I really liked, but unfortunately it was kind of mixed in with a bunch of kind of BS that I really didn't care about. And I just kind of, I don't know, it felt like one of those episodes where characters just kind of acted out of character because we needed conflict for one reason or another, and thus it just didn't feel genuine. But I'll get into the specifics. So the first thing I'll talk about is an aspect of the episode that I actually did kind of like, which is Clark trying to bond with the kids more now that he finally has some free time. However, of course, the kids are kind of more interested in attending this party, but of course they don't want to hurt their dad's feelings, so they lie to him, say that they're just hanging out with some other friends, which still, of course, hurts his feelings. But regardless, what I kind of do like about this is that, Clark kind of takes it personal at first, being a dad that doesn't, appreciate that his kids doesn't want to spend time with him when he finally has free time off, but then, kind of looks at it through their point of view because of John at the very end, saying that, yeah, you're busy all the time, and unfortunately, we can't just wait for you to have free time, especially because at that particular moment it was kind of like he was about to see Candace for the first time in over a month. So when you have that kind of option going on, see my girlfriend I haven't seen in a month, or go watch wrestling with my dad who I see all the time, it's kind of understandable that they're going to choose the latter. So what I do like about this episode, though, is that it finally shows a little bit of weakness in Clark, a little humanity. Now, we've seen a lot of humanity in Clark, of course, throughout the entire series, but this really kind of, you rarely see any weakness in him, so this was like one of those rare moments where we get to see a little bit of that in him, of him, like, having to learn, from his son. It's almost always, obviously, because he's the parent, it's always the opposite way around, it's always like him teaching a lesson to his kids, so it's kind of cool when every now and then you get a sprinkle of the student becoming the teacher, per se. But let's get into the part of the episode that I wasn't a fan of, which is the actual party that Jonathan and Jordan go to. Okay, so right off the bat, I just gotta say this, if you're gonna invite your socially awkward friend to a senior kegger, don't suddenly give him attitude because he wants to talk to you during said kegger. Even if you are hanging out with someone else, you're the one that invited him, so it's kind of douchey for you to just kind of like brush him off, and the way that Sarah kind of does to Jordan in this episode. Now, I'm not going to try to say that Jordan was completely innocent in this episode, because he himself also had some whiny behavior. Pretty much he was just kind of acting like extra pouty when he really didn't need to, even though I do kind of feel for him, because I feel like all of us have had that one party where we're there but we know absolutely no one except for the people who we do know that are there. They're kind of busy doing their thing, and I feel like that's something that literally everyone's gone through, so I think to an extent we can feel to him, but it doesn't quite excuse all of his behavior that he kind of gives towards Sarah when she confronts him about like the way she kind of brushes him off. But that being said, I do still think Sarah kind of brushing him off in the beginning of that, there is quite a bit of fault there, especially, again, if you're the one who invited him to the party, right? And you also know, because he's your best friend, that he is socially awkward, so kind of just telling him to come join you at a senior kegger and then ditching him, obviously he's going to be a little bit upset and maybe say some things that he'll regret. I don't know. It was my least favorite part of the episode, and it just really made Sarah very unlikable. But after this party, basically the sheriff, of course, arrives, and so every teenager at the party is trying to drive off. So Sarah and the ex-mayor's son, whose name I totally forgot. I know that he's named after his dad, but regardless, the two of them take off in Sarah's car, and unfortunately this is where, of course, she gets into an accident from trying to escape, basically nearly kills a really bad CGI deer, and then In the process, we get an accident with some really bad CGI. I'm really joking, of course. The CGI wasn't actually that bad. It was decent. I think because it was in an extremely dimly lit scene, it was kind of hard to tell how good or bad it was. But this leads to Jordan having to rescue him, and it leads to Mayor Dean. That was his name. All right, so Dean Jr., or I guess they just keep calling him Jr. in the show. So it leads to Jr. actually seeing Jordan as Jordan is flying away, not of course recognizing that it's Jordan, just recognizing him as, just this superhero kid with goggles on. But regardless, kind of like how we just know the show is no longer in the Arrowverse, we know that powers are not a very common thing in this universe. So I will give this episode credit for that. This was the first episode where I actually thought, okay, it actually is kind of good the show isn't in the Arrowverse, because this plot line wouldn't be a big deal if it was, with superheroes in the Arrowverse, of course, being extremely common, but superheroes on this Earth being basically just Superman and Steel, and then, of course, now Jordan. But regardless, yes, it does make sense that this would be a much bigger deal, and something that, leads to Kyle's storyline, which is basically to just get gaslit from everyone in town. So before, Jordan went to go rescue Sarah and Junior from the accident, Kyle had been, as we know from the previous episode, suspicious about there being someone with superpowers in Smallville. But basically, as he's kind of doing his own investigating, he's trying to, tell Chrissy about this. Chrissy, of course, already knowing the truth, just brushes him off. And then after the accident with Sarah, basically he and Lana confront her together, and he brings it up to Sarah again, saying that, hey, I heard from Junior that there was an accident and that, a person with superpowers rescued the two of you. But of course, Sarah completely denies this. And with Lana even backing her denial of this, this is just completely frustrating Kyle to the point where he eventually kind of pieces it together. Almost. He gets a few details wrong, but he basically then suspects that John is the superhero in Smallville. But we'll get a little more into what happens there later on. But let's just say he discovers this at one of the worst possible times that he possibly could. Next thing we'll talk about, I guess actually I did bring up Lana, so I'll give a honorable mention to the Lana governor kind of side plot going on. It really wasn't super important, I don't think, at least not until the very end. It really just kind of felt like padding. There was this state governor that was visiting Smallville. I believe she was the state governor, maybe she was a senator. I don't know or care, but anyway, she was visiting Smallville, and basically it was kind of a weird, they wanted to make a not awkward situation awkward somehow, so they basically have her very nosy within Lana's business, being basically trying to find, talking about the fact that she's a single mother, and then saying that, oh, I bet your, ex-husband probably left you for a younger floozy or something like that, while Chrissy is right there. And it's just, I don't know, usually the dialogue on the show is on point, but this was just one of those rare moments where it kind of killed me, how badly this was written. It was like they were really trying to force an awkward situation where there wasn't really an awkward situation, if this makes sense. They were trying to make it weird that Chrissy was, following Lana and basically covering her with the governor, of course, for the Smallville Gazette. But again, it just... the only way the situation would have ended the way it did, and which, there's another scene just like this that takes place in the diner, is, I don't know, it just felt very forced, very much like forced humor, or I'm sure it'll lead to something important later on. But the important part of this episode was how it ended with, of course, the governor discovering that Sarah was drinking and driving, or just discovering that she was in a police car, basically, and of course not looking very good for Lana. And this may be important later on, but I feel like that's more just setting up stuff for season 4, if there is a season 4, but we'll have to wait and see. Now we'll get to the important part of the episode, the part that I actually really love, which is Lois and Pia. Basically, Lois trying to get Pia to confess to all of her crimes, because one way or another, people are going to find out things about her. And Lois's way to get through to Pia, which I actually thought was brilliant, was just, trying to get Pia to tell her truth, basically. Would you rather die with a terrible legacy, or would you rather die with people knowing your full story? At least knowing, instead of people looking at you like a faceless monster, people actually getting to know why you did the things that you did. So, this works up until it comes to the murder of Moxie, the previous leader of Intergang, because she refuses to admit that she killed him and not Lex Luthor. And it's not because she, is afraid of people finding out more secrets about her. It's more because, this is what put Lex Luthor in prison. And I am pretty sure, the last thing you would want to know right before you die is that you let someone like Lex Luthor out of prison. Because one thing that she makes very clear to Lois is that Lex Luthor is the only human being on the planet that terrifies her. So she refuses to let Lex Luthor out of prison, or she refuses to confess, and thus causing Lex to be innocent. So this is the one confession Lois is not able to get out of her. She tries a tactic of, telling her about, what kind of legacy will you leave for your kid? What will your kid think of you, after you're gone? But the last big thing that kind of happens is that she does get a moment with her son, Mateo. And it turns out Mateo, like we saw in the previous episode, we know that Bruno claimed that he finally had a working cure for cancer. So he gave that cure to Mateo. Basically, Mateo used it, and it was to look like a button on his suit, which of course no one at the DoD questioned at all. And when he eventually got alone with his mother, was able to basically inject the cure into his mother, causing her to be cured of cancer, and also giving her the means to escape. And this is actually what I think will lead to the downfall of Bruno and Pia, and possibly lead to Lex Luthor's release, which is the fact that Mateo is now an accomplice, which means basically if they get Mateo into custody, the only way they'll be able to let him go, let him have full immunity, is if Bruno and Pia agree to both surrender and confess to every crime out there, which is how I think which is the direction I'm pretty sure they're gonna go when we get to the season finale of this series. That is my prediction, and that'll be probably what leads to Lex Luthor's release. I am very curious to see if we're gonna get more than one episode with Lex Luthor, or if it's just gonna be that he shows up in the very last episode. I have no idea. They made it seem like he was gonna play at least somewhat of a bigger part in the show because they gave him his own teaser, but that doesn't seem to be the case, which is very surprising. But regardless, let's see what else, because I feel like, oh yeah, I am missing one more thing. So going back to the whole Kyle thing, when he's trying to confront Clark about it, basically Clark is trying to kind of explain, but Kyle comes at the worst moment, because it's at this moment that Pia is escaping the DoD. So basically Clark is forced to fly off on the scene, promising to Kyle that he will explain everything tomorrow. But regardless, he's forced to fly off, and but by the time he gets to the DoD, it's too late. Pia has escaped, and Kyle now, at least at this moment, probably has figured out that Clark is Superman. I'm gonna laugh if he just kind of assumes that Clark just is a guy with powers, and he was the one behind everything, which, I mean, technically the first thing that he listed, which is what happened during the events of season 1, technically Clark was there for that, but the other things that were Jordan, him talking about it it was John that did all that. Yeah, I just confused myself with that sentence, but regardless, again, not a good episode, but not a bad one. Again, there were things I liked about it. I did like the Clark's trying to bond with his kids part of that, whole storyline. I just didn't like the actual party part of the story. I thought it was not that good. And then also the same with the stuff with Lon and the governor. That stuff was just boring to me, and I thought it was just very forced. But I thought the stuff with Lois and Pia was absolutely excellent. And again, I'm very curious to see the consequences now that Mateo is officially involved. He is now an official accomplice, so we'll see where that leads. But overall, not my favorite episode, But at the end of the day, these are just my A+ opinions. We here at A+ Opinions always want to hear what you guys think. So definitely let me know your thoughts on the episode in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. But of course, above all, guys, don't forget to keep it A+. And I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.